It was in 1949 that a 30-year-old British officer who had seen wartime service found himself in Malta. There he would have been aware of another officer, some 2 years younger than him, who was there with his relatively new wife, the Princess Elizabeth. The second officer clearly was the Duke of Edinburgh. The first officer was my father. And they would have moved in the same sort of circles at that time and certainly been aware of each other. I know for certain that they attended some of the same social events in Malta at that time. They embodied that particular generation, and in particular the Duke of Edinburgh embodied that generation born just after the First World War, who then went through the Second World War and lived their lives through most of the 20th century and indeed in many cases into the 21st century. The Duke of Edinburgh's story is a remarkable one. He was born in Corfu, the son of a younger brother of the King of Greece. That King of Greece himself actually was born as a junior prince of the Royal House of Denmark and then bizarrely found himself being invited to become the King of Greece. The young Prince Philip, a prince of both Denmark and Greece, was related in also to the royal families of Russia and of Germany, and was brought up in that area where in the years after the First World War, it was pretty full of turmoil and instability. National boundaries changed, monarchs came and went, and there was significant instability and indeed violence. And it was when he was a very, very young baby that he and his parents had to be evacuated when his father's life was under threat. And King George V sent a Royal Navy ship, King George was another relative, to evacuate them. And they ended up in France, and time also spent in the UK and in Germany, usually, frankly, living off relatives because they had very little. So a really disturbed early childhood, and his two parents, for reasons of illness and of character, becoming increasingly distant both from each other and from him. And it was really, I think, only the stability of school in the UK from the age of 7 onwards, and then service in the Royal Navy, including through the war years, that gave to this young man the kind of stability which enabled him then to discern new opportunities for him in life. And I think it was something of that experience which must have led him, inspired him later in life to found the Duke of Edinburgh Awards Scheme, to enable other young people, young adults, teenagers, particularly those with deprived backgrounds, to have some of the opportunities which he had been able to enjoy as a result of his schooling and his military service. And so he crafts this scheme, which has been transformative for so many thousands, tens, hundreds of thousands, not only in the UK, but across the world. We can also see how then through 73 years at the Queen's side, he embodies a number of other really important things. Loyalty, service, support, for example, there at the Queen's side. He said at one point that his purpose, as it were, was to enable the Queen to be the Queen. There's something rather important in that, I think. He also embodies, I think, humour. We see that twinkle in his eye, humour that sometimes may have been a little bit near the edge, but I think was genuine as well. And with that, quite often blunt speaking, but blunt speaking which was, I think, kindly meant. Tremendous knowledge and passion on certain topics. Technology, he was an early advocate of technology and its benefits, industry and commerce, and importantly, the environment. He was ahead of his time in his realization of the challenges facing humanity and what needed to be tackled, and engaged with that incredibly personally and with passion and commitment and knowledge. What is perhaps less well known is that he is a poet. He had 200 books of poetry, he wrote poetry himself, and also a great interest in philosophy and theology, as any of us who have had the challenge of preaching at Sandringham will know when quizzed afterwards by the Prince from his substantial background of knowledge. all sorts of dimensions to the prince's life. And that perhaps explains why people are so evidently being moved by his death and wanting to acknowledge it and express it in some way, as well as expressing our support for Her Majesty the Queen. He has clearly made an impact on people's lives. And actually, if you look at photographs through the years of his service, his image, in a sense, runs as a thread through the story of the second half of the 20th century and the early part of the 21st century. The marking of his death, of course, will be muted, both at his own request, but also because of the pandemic. That said, we are able to pray in our homes and in our church communities, not least as our places of worship continue to reopen. We can offer thanks, we will offer thanks for the Duke of Edinburgh, for all that he has been, for all that he has given. And perhaps in our thanksgiving we will be aware also of the passing of that generation of which he is perhaps a really strong embodiment, maybe the embodiment alongside Her Majesty the Queen. There's a question which I think the Duke's life poses for us. I've talked about what he embodied, and that reflects the question back to me: what do I embody? What do you embody? What are the values which are seen as I seek to live out my life in the way that the Duke expressed his values through his life? And for those of us who would claim to be Christian, how do I embody the life of Christ? How is Christ seen in me? A prayer of thanksgiving. Blessed Jesus, Lord of Lords and King of Kings, we give you thanks for the life of Philip, Duke of Edinburgh, for the grace and mercy he received from you, for his faithful love and support for Her Majesty the Queen, and his service to this nation, home and abroad. Enfold him in your everlasting arms, grant him rest, and raise him up at the last in the company of the saints in light. Amen.